Most human beings believe the greatest wars are those fought on battlefields, with weapons, with armies, and with noise. But the most grueling battles are not fought with swords or bullets. They are fought in silence. Inside the mind, within the heart, and often beneath a smile. These are the battles no one writes about, no one claps for, and no one truly understands, except the one who fights them. When you are bruised on the outside, people see. They sympathize, they acknowledge, but when the injury is internal, when your mind becomes your enemy and your thoughts become thorns, there is no bandage, no medicine, no witness. You carry the storm in silence while pretending everything is fine. This is not just painful, this is exhausting in ways the body cannot express. A man who walks alone without support is often not just lonely in his path, he is entangled in conflicts that others cannot perceive. The self-doubt that rises like smoke, the fear of failure that gnaws like termites, the guilt, the regret, the shame, these are not emotions that pass like clouds, they take root, they stay, and when there is no one to reflect, no one to confide in, they grow louder and more powerful. The irony of the inner battle is that the enemy wears your face, it speaks in your voice, it uses your memories as weapons. Others may betray you once, but your mind, when left unchecked, can betray you 1,000 times in a single day. You may smile at the world, attend to your duties, play your roles, and fulfill your responsibilities, but deep down, you're being torn by forces invisible to others. You cannot run from this war. You cannot put it off. And you cannot fake victory, because everywhere you go, your mind follows. There is no corner of the world where you can hide from your own thoughts. People think suffering is caused by situations, but 90% of human misery is created by internal reactions, not external circumstances. Two people can go through the same hardship. One breaks, the other bends. Why? Not because the outer challenge was different, but because the inner response was. Most people want to fix their life by changing what's outside. Change the job, the partner, the environment. But the one thing that truly needs attention is what's happening within. You can sleep on a soft bed and still not rest. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. You can achieve everything and still feel empty. These are signs of the inner battle raging on, unheard and unseen. To fight an inner battle means to sit with your pain without running, to look at your fears, not with judgment, but with clarity. It means being brutally honest about your emotions, not for the world to see, but for you to understand. Most people suppress or escape. They drown themselves in distraction, in noise, in activity, so they never have to hear what their silence is saying. But true growth comes when you stop running from yourself. When you face the chaos within, it doesn't quieten immediately. It resists, it fights back, like a beast that has been cornered. But slowly, with patience, with awareness, the storm begins to settle. Not because the problems have vanished, but because your presence has deepened. You are no longer merely reacting, you are witnessing. This witnessing is not passive. It is the most powerful thing a human being can do. To watch one's own thoughts, to observe one's own patterns, and to consciously shift one's own energy. This is mastery. It is not about controlling the world. It is about mastering the one terrain where peace or suffering is truly born, the mind. When you are at war within, no achievement feels like success, and no compliment feels like truth. You can earn millions and still feel poor. You can receive praise and still feel unworthy. That's the power of the inner voice. It shapes your entire experience of life. And if that voice is negative, wounded, or angry, your reality reflects that. There are people who have everything the world envies, wealth, status, fame, but they still wake up every day with a heaviness they cannot explain. That heaviness is not in their schedule, it's not in their relationships, it's in the weight they carry in their mind, and often that weight is made heavier by the silence they are forced to maintain. Because in this society, talking about inner pain is seen as weakness, so they suffer in solitude, smiling outside, crumbling inside. Fighting inner battles requires more courage than most people understand. It is not about displaying strength. It is about facing your own brokenness, not with fear, but with compassion. It is about allowing yourself to be vulnerable without collapsing into victimhood. It is about healing, not just surviving. And this process, though invisible to the world, is the most significant transformation any human being can undergo. In today's world, everyone listens to noise. The loudest voice often dominates the space. But those who truly observe life closely know that silence carries a depth that noise cannot reach. A scream may shake the air for a moment, but silence can echo within a person for a lifetime. The pain that is unspoken, the emotions that are buried, the thoughts that are never expressed, these create a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It brings pressure, and that pressure builds silently day after day. Most people assume that silence is a sign of calm, but not all silence is peaceful. Sometimes silence is suffocating. It is the silence of someone who has so much to say, but no one to say it to. The silence of someone who is not heard even when surrounded by people. The silence of someone who has cried out so many times and received no response that they simply stopped trying. That silence is not absence of sound. It is a presence, a heavy, invisible presence that weighs down on the soul. There are moments in life when you want to scream, not because you expect someone to save you, but simply to be acknowledged, to know that your pain exists in someone else's awareness, even briefly. But when even that seems pointless, people fall into silence, not the meditative silence that heals, but the kind that isolates. This silence becomes a shield, a wall, a way of saying I'm fine, when nothing is fine at all. When a man walks through life with no support, his silence is not simply because he has nothing to say. Often it is because he knows that speaking won't change anything. He knows that the world is more interested in outcomes than emotions. People will ask what you've done, not what you've endured. They will see the result, not the resilience. So the man goes quiet, not weak, not defeated, just silent, and in that silence his inner world becomes louder. Thoughts repeat themselves, doubts multiply, regrets replay like broken records. Every silence begins to speak in its own language. A missed opportunity whispers, a broken trust murmurs, a lost hope echoes. And still no one sees it, because outwardly he may laugh, he may work, he may succeed, but inside he is surrounded by a thunderstorm that makes no sound. We live in a culture that idolizes expression, but rarely recognizes suppression. If someone shouts or cries, people respond. If someone says, I'm struggling, people might reach out. But when someone says nothing, when he smiles too much, avoids too much, withdraws too much, most people turn away. They think he's okay, but silence for such a man is often a survival mechanism. It's the only way to contain what might explode otherwise. Not all wounds bleed. Some wounds sit deep in the chest and are stitched up with silence. Day after day, people carry these wounds to work, to family dinners, to social gatherings. They laugh with them, eat with them, even sleep beside them. And because they don't speak of them, the world assumes they don't exist. But silence, you see, is not the opposite of noise. It is a kind of noise that only sensitive ears can hear, the kind that says, I'm hurting, I'm tired, I'm trying, but I don't want to burden anyone. It is important to understand that when a person chooses silence, it is not always a choice made out of peace. Sometimes it is made out of exhaustion. When you speak and you're not understood, the pain is tolerable. But when you speak and you're ignored, or worse, judged, the silence that follows becomes a prison, and the man sitting in that prison is not weak. He is simply alone in a way that most people cannot comprehend. He walks through life carrying an inner weight heavier than most can imagine, not because his problems are unique, but because his silence gives no clues. The world only reacts to what it can see, and silence, by its very nature, hides the storm. This is why many people collapse when no one expected it, because the signs were not loud, they were silent, and silence, unlike sound, can be easily overlooked, until it's too late. In the stillness of night, when there is no one around and no distractions to hide behind, silence becomes the loudest companion. It brings everything to the surface, every mistake, every fear, every unanswered question. There is no conversation to drown it out, no task to distract the mind. It is just the person and the echo of everything they have tried not to think about. In this life, support is a beautiful thing. A comforting word, a helping hand, someone to lean on in a moment of weakness. But to rely on it is a luxury not everyone can afford. Many walk through life without that cushion, without that presence who says, "I'm here for you." And when that is missing, something deeper must arise, not as a choice but as a necessity. That something is resilience. Support can soften the fall. But when there is no one to catch you, you learn how to land. You learn how to stand again, not because you feel strong, but because you have no other option. This is not taught in books or seminars. It is learned in the silence of hardship, in the stillness after disappointment, in the quiet after being let down again and again. Resilience grows not in the warmth of comfort, but in the cold of solitude. A man without support doesn't wake up thinking he will conquer the world. He wakes up thinking he must survive the day, and that survival over time becomes strength. Not the kind of strength people admire in photographs or speeches, but the kind that endures in private without applause. When the world turns its back, he learns to turn inward. When no one believes in him, he learns to believe in something beyond belief. He learns to trust his own breath, his own will, his own ability to simply keep moving forward. There are people who grow up in environments where help is always a phone call away. If they stumble, someone catches them. If they cry, someone hears them. But there are others, many others, who don't have that safety net. They don't have shoulders to lean on or ears that listen, so they learn to carry their burdens alone, and in doing so they discover a different kind of intelligence, a survival intelligence, a knowing that says, no matter what, I will not break. Resilience is not a show. It is not shouting strength from rooftops. It is the quiet decision to keep showing up, to keep breathing, to keep walking, even when the weight feels unbearable. It is when a man loses everything, yet something inside him refuses to give up. That something cannot be explained. It is not logic. It is not motivation. It is life's raw instinct to continue. Support can create comfort, and comfort can sometimes weaken the inner fiber. When things are always easy, the muscles of the mind, the spirit, the heart, they don't get tested. But when you walk a path with no guide, when your back hits the wall and no one is coming to rescue you, that is when your true nature emerges. That is when resilience is born, not in ease but in pressure. A man who has never had support does not complain, not because he feels no pain, but because he knows it will not change anything. His resilience comes not from pride, but from necessity. He is not trying to impress anyone. He is simply trying to make it. Day after day, he rebuilds from whatever remains, even if it is just a single thought, a single reason, a single breath. That is enough to take the next step. You see, support can be temporary. People come and go, promises change, intentions fade, but resilience, once discovered, stays. It becomes part of your being. You don't even think about it. It becomes who you are. Like the roots of a tree that grow deeper with every storm, a man without support becomes grounded not because he wants to, but because he must. He cannot afford to fall, because there's no one to pull him back up. So he learns to rise on his own, again and again. There are those who wait for encouragement, for someone to say, "You can do it." But a man who has walked alone for long enough stops waiting. He becomes his own encouragement, his own reminder, his own reason. The world may see him as cold or distant, but inside there is fire, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, quiet, unshakable. That is resilience. It is easy to speak of strength when there is applause. But true strength is forged in silence, when no one is watching, when failure comes in waves and hope is thin, and yet, somehow, he still shows up, still tries, still endures. Because support may be a blessing, but resilience is what keeps you alive when blessings are nowhere to be found. People often confuse loneliness with emptiness, as if the absence of company automatically means the absence of meaning. But the truth is, loneliness is not a void to be feared. It is a space, and like any space, it holds potential. not just for pain but for profound transformation. The human being is not just shaped by connection, but also by isolation. Not all growth comes through relationships. Some of the most powerful growth happens when you are completely alone, with no one to distract you from yourself. Loneliness is uncomfortable, not because there is nothing around you, but because there is too much within you that you have not yet faced. It forces you to confront your thoughts, your longings, your wounds, and your illusions. And in that confrontation, something begins to shift. You realize how much of your life has been built around escape, through people, noise, activity. But in loneliness, none of that is available. There is just you, raw, unedited, present. This is why loneliness can feel like a burden, but it is not the weight of emptiness. It is the weight of becoming. It is a cocoon, and just as a caterpillar dissolves before it becomes a butterfly, a human being often breaks apart internally before something higher emerges. In that breaking, in that solitude, you meet parts of yourself that were hidden beneath layers of habit and identity. You begin to see not just who you are, but what you are not. Most people run from loneliness. They fill their time with screens, schedules, conversations that mean nothing. Not because they enjoy them, but because they are terrified of what silence will reveal. But those who allow themselves to sit in that stillness discover that it is not empty at all. It is alive, it is intelligent, it is rich with possibility. It is a mirror that reflects your truth, not the version you show the world, but the one you cannot avoid in solitude. A man with no support often finds himself surrounded by loneliness, not by choice, but by circumstance. And yet, if he does not resist it, that loneliness can become his teacher. It can show him how little he needs from the outside to feel complete inside. It can teach him that peace is not something you find in others. It is something you uncover within yourself. When you sit long enough in that space, the mind begins to settle, the noise begins to fade, and what remains is something deeper than thought. It is awareness. This awareness is not a belief, it is not an idea, it is a direct experience of being, of simply existing without needing validation, attention, or confirmation. In that experience, transformation begins, not as a dramatic event, but as a subtle shift in perception. You begin to see that you are not your failures, not your fears, not even your achievements. You are the one who has witnessed all of it, and that witness is untouched by the highs and lows of life. Loneliness becomes sacred when you stop labeling it as negative. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where your inner self can breathe without interruption. In that sacred space, clarity arises. You begin to ask deeper questions, not just, what do I want, but who am I beneath all this wanting? These are not questions that others can answer for you. They are answers that emerge only in silence, only in solitude. People seek enlightenment in temples and teachings, but sometimes it is loneliness that brings you closest to the truth. Not because it gives you answers, but because it removes all distractions. It leaves you bare, and in that bareness you can no longer pretend. You cannot fake strength, you cannot cover wounds, you are simply as you are, and that honesty is the soil in which transformation grows. Many try to skip this part of the journey. They want growth without discomfort, awakening without solitude, but the deeper truths of life do not reveal themselves in crowds. They come when everything else falls away, when there is no one left to impress, no one to blame, and nothing left to hold on to. That is the moment when something ancient within you stirs, not the self that seeks attention, but the self that simply is. Steady, silent, aware, this is the power of loneliness. It does not break you. It breaks everything that is not real in you, and in that breaking it reveals something that cannot be taken away. Something that was never dependent on the world to begin with. There is a certain illusion in the world about strength, that it must always look rigid, unmoved, composed, that to be strong means never to fall, never to feel overwhelmed, never to shed a tear. But true strength has nothing to do with denial. It has everything to do with presence, and the strongest men, those who carry the heaviest burdens in silence, often cry when no one is watching. Not because they are weak, but because they are human, and because their strength has been stretched to its edges, crying is not a collapse, it is a release, like the sky opening after holding too many clouds. Like the earth cracking to let something new grow, when a man cries alone, it is not for pity, it is not even for comfort, it is simply a way to survive, to keep from becoming stone, to let what hurts inside find some form of movement, some outlet, even if there is no one there to witness it. There are moments when a man sits in silence, perhaps late at night, perhaps between responsibilities, when the world is quiet and no one demands anything from him, and in that space the weight he carries, expectations, failures, memories, losses, begins to rise. Not as thoughts, but as something felt deep in the chest, and it comes out not in words, but in tears, silent, unnoticed, but deeply real. This is not drama, this is not display, this is the heart needing to breathe. In this society, men are taught to be providers, protectors, performers, but they are rarely given space to simply feel, to be vulnerable without judgment, to break down without shame, so they learn to hide their tears. Not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much, and the world has told them that feeling too much is dangerous, unmanly, weak, so they learn to cry quietly into pillows, in the shower, in moments between the roles they play. But these quiet tears are sacred, they are honest, more honest than the smile he wears in front of others, more honest than the small talk, the jokes, the mask. Those tears are the soul speaking its truth without censorship. They say what the man himself may not be able to articulate, that he is tired, that he is hurting, that he has given everything and still feels unseen, that he is trying so hard to be strong, but sometimes he just needs to fall apart, if only for a moment. Strength is not the absence of emotion, it is the ability to face emotion fully without being destroyed by it. It is the ability to let tears flow without losing your purpose. It is knowing that crying does not take away from your courage, it deepens it. It humbles you, it reconnects you to something raw and essential. The strongest men are not those who never fall, but those who fall 1,000 times and still rise with softness in their eyes. When a man cries in solitude, he is not asking for anything. He is not hoping someone will come to fix him. He has already accepted that most of his healing must be done alone. Those tears are part of that process. They cleanse not just the eyes, but the heart. They wash away the dust of pride, the burden of pretending, the exhaustion of always being the strong one. They make space for truth, for peace, for clarity. And what's most powerful is that no one may ever know. He might show up the next morning with the same calm face, the same quiet strength, and no one would guess that the night before he was on his knees, shaking, breaking, releasing. This is the hidden side of masculinity the world rarely sees. But it exists in millions of men, every day, all over the world, carrying invisible battles, holding up families, facing fears, and occasionally allowing themselves this private moment of collapse, not as weakness, but as necessary release. To cry alone is not to fall behind, it is to catch up with your own heart, it is to pause the race the world has put you in and return to your own breath. It is a kind of medicine, not sold in bottles, but made within. The strongest men have discovered this medicine, and they use it not to escape pain, but to stay connected to their humanity. They don't broadcast it, they don't expect praise. But in those unseen moments, they touch something deeper than strength. Something tender and true. In life, not every battle is meant for display. Not every struggle is supposed to be spoken about. Some of the most profound battles a human being faces happen quietly, beneath the surface, invisible to the eyes of the world. These battles don't show up in headlines or social media posts. They do not demand applause or sympathy, but they are real, and they shape the very foundation of who a person becomes. There is a certain kind of strength that develops when no one knows what you are going through. When the pain is yours alone, when the doubts and fears echo only within your own mind, when there is no audience, only you and the situation at hand, these are not battles for recognition. They are not meant to be won or lost in the eyes of others. They are meant to transform you from within. A man may wake up every day and carry on with his routine. He may go to work, smile politely, answer messages, meet expectations. but inside he is navigating storms that no one sees. Perhaps he is questioning his worth. Perhaps he is healing from a past that never apologized. Perhaps he is holding together fragments of himself with sheer will, and yet he carries on, not because it's easy, but because he has made peace with the fact that some journeys must be walked alone. These hidden battles are not failures, they are teachers, they are not punishments, they are mirrors. They reflect back the places in you that are still raw, still unfinished, still seeking. And as difficult as they may be, they are sacred. Because they burn away illusion, they remove layers of pretense, they reveal to you what is real, what is lasting, and what can no longer stay. The world often measures a man's worth by what he shows. His achievements, his possessions, his victories, but those are only surface reflections. They don't tell the full story. The real story is in the nights he didn't sleep, the days he kept going despite no encouragement, the moments he chose discipline over despair, the times he cried but still kept moving. These are not things that others applaud because they are rarely seen. But they are what define the spirit of a human being. Transformation does not always come in moments of light. Often it arrives in the darkest places, in the silence of loneliness, in the weight of responsibility, in the confusion of not knowing what comes next. When you walk through these places without guidance, without support, without anyone even knowing what you're enduring, you begin to change, not externally but fundamentally. Your understanding deepens, your presence becomes rooted, your strength becomes silent and immovable. There is a dignity in facing life without spectacle, not because you're trying to hide, but because you understand that not everything sacred needs to be seen. Growth is often messy, awkward, unglamorous, and the soul does not need recognition to evolve. It simply needs sincerity. It needs the fire of experience and the willingness to walk through it without losing your heart. You cannot always explain your inner journey to others. Sometimes the language does not exist, and even if it did, not everyone would understand. That is why some battles are not shared. They are meant to be carried in silence. Not out of pride, but because they are personal. They are forging you into someone new. They are stripping away the unnecessary and revealing what is essential. When a man endures such battles and comes through them, he does not boast. He becomes quiet because he knows that the strength he has found is not for display. It is for living. It is not decorative. It is foundational. It is the kind of strength that allows him to stand tall even when life bends him. The kind that allows him to be kind even when the world is not. The kind that allows him to listen, to understand, to see deeply, because he has been deep within himself. There are many who walk through life wearing their pain as badges. But the ones who are truly shaped by it don't wear it at all. They carry it within as wisdom, as compassion, as depth. They do not need others to know because they know. They do not need others to approve because they have already found something greater than approval. They have found themselves, not the image but the essence, not the mask but the marrow.